Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi begins his visit to Poland. First time in 45 years that a leader of India is visiting Poland. Ahead lie opportunities for greater cooperation, but also there is the looming issue of geopolitics, as the subsequent visit in Ukraine may actually prove to be pivotal to the perception of the way India actually approaches the ongoing conflict. So, will these issues stand in the way of the possible opportunities of cooperation between Poland and India? We're going to ask our guests today. Tomasz Łukaszuk, research scientist at the University of Warsaw, and Swaran Singh, professor at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
Thank you.
So let us begin with the quick recap of what actually is on the agenda. Tomasz Łukaszuk, can you tell us briefly what Prime Minister Modi is planning to do while in Poland?
Yes, Prime Minister Modi started his visit from the historical review, what happened before. I mean, I'm speaking about the assistance of good Maharaja, of Indian Maharaja during the World War II for Polish children, Polish refugees. First, he also paid tribute to the soldiers of Poland and India from Monte Cassino battle, and he met Indian diaspora. So it was the first day of the visit. This historical review is important to understand also the traditional links we have with India, and I would say the respect and honor we pay to the Indian nation. Today it will be more official. It starts with the talks with Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and then the meeting with President Andrzej Duda.
So this is the agenda. Now, Professor Swaran Singh, can you tell us more about what opportunities lie ahead, especially since, as I've already mentioned, the last time a leader of India visited Poland was 45 years ago. That was during the era during which Poland was still a communist country, part of the Soviet bloc. So things have changed indeed. What are the opportunities which now a closer cooperation between Poland and India could bring for the near future?
Thank you for having me on your program. I think India and Poland share a very important economic relationship and also defense cooperation. And in both these areas, I think there will be several MOUs and initiatives that will take relationship forward. And there could be also exploration of other avenues. What makes Poland unique for India among European countries that India is primarily engaged with is that Poland was never an imperial power for India. The relationship included most of the from 17th century onward, we had visitors, we had artists of Poland, Indologists of Poland coming here, and of course, various missionaries and of course, royal noble family people coming here. So very strong, but social and cultural and of course, commercial relationship for a long period of time. You mentioned Poland at some stage being a communist country. I want to very quickly mention that during the Second World War, great leaders of India were very vocal in criticizing both the German invasion and Soviet occupation. Later, of course, India also grew closer to Soviet Union, and so also Poland was close friend of Soviet Union, and that again brought them on similar platform. After collapse of Cold War, again, India was looking for new relationship with the Western nations and United States. So was the Democratic Republic of Poland. So there were also opportunities to build relationship closer together. India had Polish consulates and embassies before India became independent in Mumbai, in Calcutta, in Amritsar. So it's a very different kind of relationship that doesn't have any irritants in the relationship. And I think what is important in this visit is how Poland has been a very important frontline state in dealing with Ukraine crisis. And when India wants to engage with that issue of how can Ukraine crisis be resolved, I think the first stop of Indian Prime Minister in Poland is a very significant step in that sense, and I'm sure it will contribute to the outcomes that Prime Minister will have in Kiev.
So which brings us neatly to the other issue here, which is impossible to ignore. Poland has been a vocal supporter of Ukraine ever since the war began, being, as it is, a stakeholder in this war. A country that would stand to lose a lot if Ukraine was to fall and if Russia was to continue its expansion. Tomasz Łukaszuk, what do you think is likely to be the main theme, if you will, when it comes to foreign policy? Do you think that the Polish authorities will try to present their view, and by extension also the Ukrainian view, to Prime Minister Modi, who until recently has not been known for exactly being on Ukraine's side? Of course, we cannot really speak about someone being on somebody else's side because India, as a sovereign country, pursues its own foreign policy. But of course, we know about the vectors there. We know that the West wants India on the same page. We know that India is engaged in a bitter rivalry with China, and also that Russia and China are coming closer together. Do you think there is a space for some sort of renewed understanding of where things are at this stage?
Yes, definitely. There is a space for understanding, but I would like to emphasize that for India to be or not to be on the page of the Western alliances, it's not the question, because the core of the Indian thinking about foreign policy is strategic autonomy, and we have to honor it. Speaking about the understanding of our position, it is definitely is there in Indian allies, because there is a very close communication between foreign ministers, Minister Radosław Sikorski and Minister Jaishankar. So I have no doubt that this understanding during today's talks with Prime Minister Tusk and President Duda will be deepened. And also probably it will be discussed the matter, not only the Russian aggression in Ukraine and the war going on, but also the step further, step after the war, how both India and Poland can jointly support Ukraine in recovery and also help Ukraine to become once again one of the leading countries in the world economy. So this particular issue between Poland and India, I really don't see as any problem of understanding, because India understands that Poland is the hub of operations in Ukraine and is the leading country in NATO eastern flank, and its pivotal role in constructing the new architecture and Central and Eastern Europe is without no doubt for Indian politicians.
So, Professor Swaran Singh, what do you expect from the upcoming visit in Kiev? We know that the recent talks between Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi sparked some outrage in Ukraine. President Zelensky himself said he was disappointed that a leader of the world's greatest, biggest democracy should embrace a war criminal, that is Vladimir Putin. So, of course, there is some bad blood there, but do you think that this can actually be resolved, and that perhaps a recent analysis by Foreign Policy magazine may actually indicate that India is delicately trying to signal that it might actually be changing its stance a little bit by, of course, having Prime Minister Modi visit Ukraine at this very stage. And that is because Russia is becoming more and more of an unreliable partner, and also one that continues to ally itself with China. And naturally, the relationship between China and India is, well, complicated at this stage.
That's right. I think in diplomacy, we say the best agreements are those where everyone goes home a little unhappy. Because if either of the two sides is the one which is happy, making the other unhappy, then those solutions will not be enduring. So I understand Indian Prime Minister's visit to Moscow made some of the Western nations, including President Zelensky, very upset about the way it was conducted. But so was President Putin. If you remember, the visit took place in such a fashion that on second day, some of the meetings did not take place. So there are reasons sometimes how Sergei Lavrov also shows great anger with India. The way India is engaging, for example, in quadrilateral security dialogue in Indo-Pacific. So any power, once it becomes increasingly influential, will have some countries not really in full agreement with what it does, because India cannot be bandwagoning any country, whether it is United States or Russia. So to some extent, both sides are likely to have their own grievances as to how India is engaging and conducting itself. So this visit is clearly a signal to Russia that India is not bandwagoning Russia. India is, as my very esteemed co-panelist mentioned, is pursuing its own strategic autonomy in foreign policy, pursuing its own national interest, largely keeping within the normative frame of rule of law and so on. So in that sense, I think what we can expect from Prime Minister Modi's visit to Kiev is not like the Swiss summit, which is again a one-sided unanimous diktat to Russia, which was boycotted by Russians and Chinese. Neither it is Wang Yi's proposal, 13-point proposal of last year, which was completely demolished by all Western nations. So India is trying to work really snail-paced, piecemeal, modest, behind the curtain, to see where India can make, if any, value addition. And that was the language when recently Indian Deputy National Security Advisor visited Kiev to plan for this visit. The Chief of Staff of President Zelensky and the Indian Deputy National Security Advisors used the same language, that India can contribute substantially in the entire peace process efforts that are on the play right now. I hope Indian Prime Minister's statement from Kiev will be a little more specific to give some more clearer idea as to how exactly India is trying to, sort of contribute whatever it can. But I think it's a very piecemeal, modest, behind the curtain approach that India has followed so far, mostly in pursuing peace in so many other episodes also. But I think going to Poland and engaging with Poland itself is also lately also showing a certain fatigue. In fact, entire West, including United States, are showing certain fatigue in supporting Ukraine. They have their own economic problems, and we are aware that the increasing reluctance in Poland makes Poland relatively cautious of unstinted support to Ukraine. And that stage, I think, is perfect, where India can now go and engage with Poland first, and then from there to Kiev. Let me very quickly, last 10 seconds, make a point. India has been constantly also trying to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukraine all these 2.5 years. And if you look at the language India has used with President Putin, one after another meetings, the last meeting in Moscow, Indian Prime Minister said, you cannot conceptualize, think of any peace talks either being in place or becoming effective in the middle of bombing. And that was indication to bombing in Kiev, and he mentioned death of civilians. So Russia also is partly unhappy the way India is conducting itself, but India is for peace. And I think that is the focus India has when Indian Prime Minister visits Kiev, to do some kind of minimalist approach which should be effective, rather than do grandstanding, which is going to be at all not effective. Either side is going to be unhappy with that. Where two parties can meet, where two parties can work together, is what is being tried by Indian Prime Minister when he goes to Kiev.
And that, I believe, is a fitting conclusion here. What matters is the actual end result. There are different pathways to peace, but if peace is achieved in a way that's satisfactory to especially the aggrieved side, that is Ukraine, then it is certainly worth the effort. Tomasz Łukaszuk and Professor Swaran Singh were our guests today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
And I'm Joanna Szerewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.